I've had the M1 MacBook Air for around 9 months now, and the performance has been fantastic, but it's also not been perfect. So stick around and let me explain. Hello everyone, my name's Mike, and here at Tech Moon I uncover Apple tech and Apple related tech. So hit that subscribe button and notification bell if that's what you're into. I bought the base M1 MacBook Air in November of 2020, and I've been using it extensively since. It has 8GB of unified memory and has the 8-core CPU and 7-core GPU M1 chip with 256GB of SSD storage. Now, you can pick this exact model up for around £900 or $900 on Amazon, so I'll leave a link down in the description below if you want to pick one up. Now, I will get into how I got on with the 8GB of unified memory with my uses, and how in certain situations I would have gone for the 16GB. So stick around as I will tell you if the 8GB is right for you or you should go for the 16GB version. The MacBook Air hasn't changed in several years design wise, but it's still one of the best built laptops for its price point. Its aluminium structure is still market leading in my opinion, with almost no flex on the keyboard or on the screen. Space Grey is my favourite colour in my opinion, but again it comes in gold and silver, which looks great too. The screen has been upgraded from last year's model with wide P3 colour support, meaning more visible colours, making this great for photo and video editing. This basically means that it has the same screen that's found on the MacBook Pro models. Now, the Air does only have 400 nits of brightness, but this is still better than a lot of Windows machines and is still great outdoors, except for when it's in direct sunlight, which this can struggle a bit, but definitely beats a lot of Windows laptops, especially at this price point. At normal viewing distances, this 2560 by 1600 display is sharp with no visible pixels. Now, yes, the bezels aren't as thin as some Windows laptops out there, but this is definitely not going to take away from the viewing experience. What does take away from the experience is the fact that I only have 2 ports. Most of the time I can get away with it by using a dongle, and for most people I would recommend you get one. So I'll leave some links down in the description below to the ones that I use with no issues, but there is some setups of mine where I definitely would have benefited from another port or 2 on the other side. The keyboard is fantastic, it's reliable and feels nice to type on even for long periods of time. There is no touch bar with this model, which for some of you may be perfect for, but if the rumours are anything to go by, it may look like pretty much all models will not have the touch bar, as people were having issues with accidental mispresses and software bugs. I like the fact that this has the function row keys, and I have quicker access to Spotlight, Do Not Disturb and Siri, which I do surprisingly use quite a lot. Now let's get into the speakers, microphones and the webcam. Yes, this still does have a 720p camera, which still sucks, but it's better than the older models. It falls apart for sure in low light situations, but with the right lighting setup, it's good. It's not great, but it's good enough. The microphones though are so much better. Honestly, half the time I didn't even need to plug in my expensive external mic setup because this really did do a great job. I wouldn't use this for any paid work or videos as such, but for getting things done for Zoom calls or anything like that, this really did do a good job. Let me show you a couple of scenarios of the webcam and microphone so that you know what to expect. So this is a test of the webcam and microphone quality of the M1 MacBook Air, and as you can hear, the microphone quality is pretty good. The thing that lets it down is the webcam. It's almost like I've got this beauty filter going on, and I've only got one light and turned off all the other lights in the background to kind of stress test the webcam. But again, this is probably going to be the setup that a lot of you guys might be having. So yeah, don't expect too much out of this webcam. It's definitely nothing compared to the 24-inch iMac with its 1080p webcam. That webcam is fantastic. This one is not. The speakers on the M1 MacBook Air are impressive. They don't beat out the MacBook Pro 16-inch in terms of the fullness or the bass, but this definitely gets plenty loud and does a great job if you watch things like Netflix or YouTube on your Mac. Here's a quick test of the speakers for you. When it comes to battery life, it is incredible on this MacBook. I have managed to edit entire YouTube videos on a single charge, which is something that I've never been able to do. Basically, if I'm doing any productivity stuff like writing, surfing the web, accounting, or even just watching videos, I can easily get between 14 to 15 hours of battery life. And when I do some pretty intensive video editing, I can get around 8 to 10 hours of battery life, which is double of any Intel MacBook that I've ever used. Now, let's talk about the M1 chip, because this really has blown me away, but it's not perfect. The old Intel MacBook Air with its i3 10th gen processor was underwhelming in both the CPU and GPU performance and would overheat with even just some mild tasks. Well, with this M1 chip, it pretty much is the complete opposite story. It is pretty much faster than any laptop chip, unplugged or plugged in. That's right, unlike a lot of Windows laptops, you'll get the same performance when on battery power as you do when plugged in, meaning that you'll get the maximum performance at your fingertips no matter where you are. That is a stark difference to many Windows laptops. The M1 chip has been capable enough for me to edit all of my 4K 10-bit videos just like the one you're watching now. Check out my other videos if you want to see specific test results for other programs, but basically this was able to handle pretty much any heavy productivity and multitasking tasks that I threw at it. If you are someone that does a lot of college and uni work, then this model in its current configuration will be absolutely fine for you. Now, I did find that if you had more than 30 tabs open while running some intensive applications like Final Cut Pro or Blender at the same time, then I did notice a bit of a slowdown. Also, while I was rendering out a video and trying to use the internet at the same time or editing a thumbnail at the same time, then it definitely did struggle to the point where it was unusable. Now, having 16 gigabytes of unified memory in these situations would have helped. Also, I did find that the M1 MacBook Air can stutter during long video editing sessions, which again, the 16 gigabyte model would have probably have solved this issue. But if you can't stretch to it, don't worry, because it still cuts like butter, but just be aware that it's not completely flawless. If you are someone that uses Blender on the Mac, then this does perform really well, even though it's not perfectly optimized for M1 right now. These kinds of programs I do wish, when I'm using it, had a little bit more GPU performance. So if you want to use Blender on the M1 MacBook Air, it's definitely faster than the older Intel models, but if you can afford it and if you can wait, then I would definitely recommend waiting for the M1X models, which is obviously going to cost you a little bit more, but will run much faster. Yes, the M1 MacBook Air doesn't have a fan, but honestly, it doesn't need it. The M1 MacBook Pro does perform better, but only just, and it's not worth the extra $300 or so in my opinion. Save that money or buy the 16GB version, as I think that the 16GB M1 MacBook Air would be a far better choice and better value for money than the 8GB M1 MacBook Pro. The thermals of the M1 MacBook Air really didn't stop me in creating. It was more that I just needed more performance when I started doing things like motion tracked effects or some 3D visual effects, but this Mac really isn't designed for that stuff anyway, and I don't really know any other laptop that would do a better job at this price point, at this size, with its battery life. The software support is far better now, as developers have had a little bit more time to not only make it M1 compatible, but also optimize it to make it work better with the M1 chip. I did have a few issues with certain plugins and software when I first got the M1 MacBook Air and had to use a bunch of workarounds to use them, but now there are only literally a handful of plugins that I'm still waiting to be updated, but I don't think it's going to be that much longer. Now, a lot of you will ask if it's worth waiting for the M2 MacBook Air. Now, of course, nothing has been confirmed, but just to let you know, in my opinion, it will still have the 2 USB 4 ports, so if you're hoping for more ports in the new model, then you're going to be out of luck. The performance of the M2 MacBook Air will be better, but it won't outperform the M1X chip. So if you make money with your Mac and need more graphics performance, then definitely be prepared to spend more. And also, it will still have the same screen and quality as the current M1 MacBook Air, but we may have a slightly smaller footprint, but don't see a 14-inch MacBook Air version. I really don't think that's coming. Also, if you are hoping for a cheaper M2 MacBook Air, then I don't think it will be cheaper. I actually think it will cost a little bit more by an extra $100. If you are able to pick up an M1 MacBook Air for $900 right now, it is just a steal and is basically the best value laptop if you aren't into gaming. So is it worth buying the M1 MacBook Air right now with the M2 MacBook Air potentially coming around the corner? I would say yes, definitely. I mean, for £900 right now, there isn't anything out there that is as good as this. Now, in terms of gaming, no, it's not going to play your AAA games, you know, smoothly or anything like that. And the 8GB of unified memory may limit some of you professionals out there. So if you are a professional, stretch to the 16GB version. But I've been using the 8GB model to create all of these videos, and it has worked fine. But I would go for the 16GB model. Me personally, am waiting for that M1X MacBook Pro model to come out. But for $900, this is an absolute steal. And there isn't really anything out there because this really compromises on very few things and focuses on the features that the majority of you guys will care about. But there we have it. As always, this is a discussion, so please leave a comment down below on whether you've picked up an M1 MacBook Air and how you got on with it, or leave me a comment down below if you are interested in one. And also use the link down in the description to support the channel, as that really does help me out. If you haven't already, please follow me on Twitter and Instagram at TechCarMoon, drop me a like on this video and hit that subscribe button and notification bell if you want to see more from me. But if you want to see more from me right now, you guys know what to do. There's 2 videos right over here. Go ahead, click on one of them. I know you're going to love it. Anyway, look after yourselves and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.